this white girl is fucking you to piss off her father. Does that, I mean, yes, you get your dick wet, but at what cost? Hey guys, it's Kat and it's time for another episode of True Tea. I want to thank you guys so much for joining me for this episode. I really appreciated your guys' responses to last week, even though it was a rough story for me to share with you guys. I'm really thankful that you guys were able, I can't talk today. You guys were able to come and give me some love for that, so I really appreciate it. If you guys are not already subscribed to this channel, you should be. We upload videos here every Wednesday at noon, theoretically every Tuesdays. We haven't quite figured that out yet, but in theory, that's what we're doing. And we do it at noon Pacific Standard Time every single week, so you should stick around. We like to learn, share, and grow around here, and this video is gonna be a lot of oversharing, and some of y'all are gonna wanna unsubscribe after this video, but hopefully you guys will stick around because this is something I really wanted to talk about. So before we get into this juicy ass conversation, let's go to the kitchen, let's get ourselves some tea, and let's talk. Personally, I'm drinking some pomegranate green tea out of my University of New Mexico cup that I got from the students when I went and gave a talk there. If you guys ever want me to come and speak at your college, you guys can check out my description box. I got all the information about that. I love coming and meeting students. I love talking to you guys and hearing all of your guys' stories. And I love doing True Tea live sessions with you guys. So if you guys are interested in that, check my description box. Anyway, let me take a big old sip of tea before we get into this because this is going to be a doozy. So, so I wanted to tell you guys a story in this video, and I also wanted to sort of ask you guys about, well, let's just tell the story and then I'll ask you guys the question. So as some of you guys know, not too long ago, I became single, and without getting into too much detail, my last relationship was fairly vanilla. So to speak. And that was one of the many reasons why I decided to end it, right? And so, in my relationship, I wasn't really able to go out a lot. I was 21 when we started dating, and so I had not done my whole going out to the bars sort of thing. And so one of the things I was really looking forward to doing once I got out there is going to the bars and having a bunch of fun and meeting all the men's and things like that, because I hadn't really had an experience doing that. And at this point in my life, I was definitely at least 20 times more confident than I was when I was 21. So I was living in Orange County, and I decided to spice it up a bit by going to Santa Ana. Now, I used to live in City of Orange, which is pretty white, and the big difference between going out in City of Orange and going out in Santa Ana is it's a little bit more colorful out there, I would say. It's a little bit more interesting. People like to put a little bit more spice in their food, so to speak. And so I wanted to go out to Santa Ana. And so I decided to go to this club in Santa Ana. And I went out really late. I started my night really late. It was probably one of these nights where I was working on something and I had like work makeup on and I wanted to go out and share it or whatever. But I went to this little club. It was whatever. It wasn't really my vibe. But, I decided, hey, there's taco trucks after. At least I'll get some taco trucks. So I go and get my little horchata and my little quesadilla. And I sit out there, in my little corner on like a little bit of brick or whatever. And if you live in Santa Ana or you're familiar with Santa Ana, you probably know exactly where this is. But I was eating my little food and this couple walks up to me, right? It was this guy and this girl, and they looked like friends. Like their body language was very much that they're friends. It was this white blonde girl and this guy who was clearly very white, but was Asian too. And they walk up to me and they start having conversation with me. And this was at the first time I'd had like a pleasant conversation with someone that night. And so I was like really excited about, starting this conversation with them and sort of vibing with these people. Now, this is a whole other story, and some of you guys who've been following me for a minute, you probably remember me telling these stories on live stream. But the week before, I had a really scary experience where I went and hung out with this group of guys. We went to one of their studios, and without getting into too much detail, they tried to have a foursome with me. Now, they were all artists, and I was like, oh, this is going to be just like art school. We're all sort of going back to our studios and sort of talking about politics and things. But no, I didn't understand what people did after bars. And that's the thing, and this will be true for this story too. I didn't understand that a lot of people after a bar, right, if they're hanging out in their place, they're usually trying to do two things: do coke or get laid, right? I didn't understand that because in art school, when we hung out past 2 a.m, it was literally us in our studios talking politics. I mean, I guess we were just the people who weren't doing drugs or getting laid, but that's what I was expecting to do. And so I was in this really scary situation where these 3 guys tried to corner me and pressure me into having sex, and I had to like rush out of the bathroom, right? And so this time around, right, when I was meeting these people, I was like, oh, it's a guy and a girl. There's a girl there, right? And so they seem cool and they seem interesting and fun or whatever. And so we're talking and we're chatting and we have a lot in common. And so they invite me to come back to their place. Apparently they are having a bunch of people over, and look, I'm bored, and it's, you know, back then I had a really terrible sleep schedule. I used to be a really bad insomniac before I moved to Los Angeles. And I was awake, y'all, and I was ready to do something. So when they invited me back to their place, I was like, okay, cool, sure, whatever. And I got into their car and we went over to their very nice Airbnb, right? And so when I got to their place, right, I kind of started to figure out that they were a couple. You know, their body language for me was not that they were like a couple or anything. I was just like, they're just these 2 friends hanging out. But it turns out that they're a couple. And it kind of made sense as they were sort of telling their story, because apparently they were people that had met online. And, you know, he'd been someone who visited a lot. And so whenever he comes into town, they hang out. And so they're kind of a couple, but they're also not really together enough to have that degree of familiarity that might have communicated to me that they were romantically involved, I guess. And so and so it was kind of, it was interesting, right? But I'm just here for the ride. And I will be honest with you guys, and this is gonna be really clear, because there's gonna be several times when I tell you guys a story where you're like, girl, what were you doing? But sometimes I have this thing where I just become really fascinated with people, and even if it's a hot ass mess, I will stick around and enjoy the hot ass mess. Even though everything in my mind is telling me that you should go, this is not a good idea, you should go home, right? So anyway, we're at their place and he's trying to call people and we're all trying to get the party started. And this is when we formally have a conversation about drugs, and he offers me some cocaine, and I have literally never been interested in cocaine. Whenever people, whenever people describe to me how it feels to be on coke, my reaction generally is, well, I feel like that already, and I don't think you want more of that. So I just haven't seen the point, right? But like everyone does it. Like so many people do coke. It's kind of intense. Some of your favorite YouTubers, but we're not talking about that. Anyway, girl, be sweet. Woo! You know, it's hard out there in these YouTube streets. Anyway, so so we're talking about coke, and I kind of like go through the list of like things that I don't do, right? But I do mention that, you know, I had a really weird time smoking weed in school, but I learned that like if I were to do any sort of weed-like substance, it would be an edible. And so he's like, oh my gosh, I have an edible, right? And so he goes into the other room and he gets this like little gummy, bear, right? Now, when I had edibles in the past, I was really used to the brownies. That's what we did in school, is everyone made brownies or cookies, right? And so I kind of was vaguely familiar with that, but I hadn't had any sort of weed substance in me since maybe the first 2 years of me dating my ex. So I wasn't really sure what to take, but I ate the entire gummy. It was like Sour Patch like flavored, and it definitely, like back then I really had a thing for candy and Sour Patch, and I just enjoyed the taste of it, right? So we ate this Sour Patch, and we're all having this conversation, and everything's good and everything's great. And then the vibe starts changing. And the vibe starts changing. Their friends are not showing up, okay? The people that they had invited over can't make it, okay? And I probably would not have come over if it was just them, because I just really liked the idea of like this big party happening. Because again, I had not done the whole party thing, so I was like really excited about this idea of like an after party, after the bar, because I didn't really know what I was getting into at the time, right? So like I said, the vibe starts changing. And so we're sitting on the couch, and I'm sitting up on, their little bar area. The couch is right next to the bar. And by this time, y'all, I'm high, okay? I'm high. And at this point, I hadn't been high in years. Okay. And so it was really hitting me. It was really, really, really hitting me. And so I'm sitting there high as a kite. And the guy gets up to go to the bathroom, and the girl's sitting there on the couch, and we're sort of having this conversation, and she was like sort of picking at my food all night. And she turns to me and she says, baby, you've got some big, beautiful, juicy lips. Can I kiss you? And mind you, I'm high, okay? And so I'm hearing what she's saying. I'm receiving it as a positive thing being said to me. I'm nodding my head, and then also realizing that I am tragically heterosexual and have literally no interest in kissing this woman. And so I say, no, thank you, I'm really flattered, but no, I'm sorry. And, you know, while she's out there, I hear her getting text messages. I'm like, who is texting this girl this late at night, right? And he's still in the bathroom, right? So after I sort of curve her, you know, they switch places, right? She decides to go to the bathroom, and he stays out there. I'm still high, okay? Still very high. I mean, it's been a couple minutes, so of course I'm high, but I'm still high, right? And so, and so he starts talking to me and telling me the story about how the night before they managed to get 2 of the black bouncers from the club to come back to their place and have a good time with them. Now, mind you, y'all, I'm just getting out of a very monogamous vanilla relationship. And he's telling me this story of how him and his partner went out to the club and found these hot black dudes and, you know, got them to come home and have fun with them. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, that's so awesome. I wish that I had a partner who, you know, was into, you know, fulfilling my sexual interests, because I wasn't at the time. Well, I was single, but you know what I mean. And so I was kind of like, oh, that's really cool. I just kept getting stuck on like, that's really cool that you guys can do that, right? And so then he starts doing the like rubbing my leg sort of thing. And I'm high, and he was cute, so I was kind of like, okay, cool, you know, whatever. This is a thing, right? Knowing fully that like nothing's happening right now, but like, okay, maybe this is a little cute. And so while he's out there, he's also getting text messages. And so I realized that they're doing this weird thing where they're like going into the bathroom and texting each other. It's like, okay, I picked it up, right? And so she comes out and sits down next to him. And they say to me, they're like, we saw you out there by the taco trucks, and we just thought that you were really, really cute. And the guy kept saying, because I was standing really far away from them when they walked up to me, and I was sort of on a bit of a low hill sort of thing, like there was kind of, I guess, an incline. Is that the word? I don't know math. Or, you know, there was kind of a bit of an incline. And so what he had sort of described to me is that from a distance, he thought that I was very short, or at least shorter than I am. And as he walked up to me, I got bigger and bigger and bigger. And this guy was like down to here to me. And he was like, you're so tall, but you're so proportional. And you're so thick, but you're so proportional. He kept talking about how proportional I was, right? And it was really, really weird to me. Right? And so then they start talking about, you know, the experience that they had with these 2 black guys. And I'm still like, oh, this is so cool that you guys did this. This is really, really awesome. You guys did this. And, you know, I'm telling them this. And then they say, yeah, but, you know, it wasn't all that we thought it would be. You know, we kind of expected them to be a little bit more well endowed. And so by the time they tell me this, I'm still thinking to myself, oh, well, you know, sometimes that happens, you know, it doesn't always turn out that way. You know, I'm not really making a lot of connections here, right? And then he starts talking to me about how he finds me attractive. And like I mentioned, he's part Asian. And one of the things that he said to me was that, you know, usually he's not attracted to black women. You know, and he's not attracted to black women for the same reason he's not attracted to Asian women, because Asian women and black women tend to have wide set noses, but apparently I don't have that. I mean, my nose is pretty wide set, so I wouldn't really understand what he was talking about. You know, and so that was weird, but I was high, okay? I was really, really high. So I'm like, I'm understanding that his intent is positive. He's saying something nice to me. You know, he's being racist and messed up, but you know, he's, in his mind, it's a compliment. So, you know, I'm high. And by this time, I'm starting to hit that point. Like, again, I hadn't smoked weed or had weed in my system for a very long time. So this was hitting me. And so at this time, I'm starting to feel really floaty. I'm starting to feel like very much so not really quite in this world. And so I'm starting to feel like low-key sick, but also like I'm fascinated by these people. And so she kind of recants the whole, story of what they did and things. And she says to me, we just sort of thought that, you know, black men had bigger penises. And she puts her hand on me when she says this, and that black women have deeper and wetter vaginas. And so, it was at that point that I actually started to really recognize that, oh, they're going to the clubs to meet black people to That's what they're doing. But I'm high and I don't really know how to get out of this. And it was weird because even though there was this like really messed up thing that they were saying, it was like, there was a part of me that was still like, oh, this is so cool that they can do this, you know? So I was like, so kind of like conflicted because I was like, this is really messed up and racist, but also like, hey, you guys are really awesome. But it was also like 4 a.m. I didn't really know how I was going to get home. So I was just kind of like, okay. And I knew again that I wasn't going to do anything with these people. And they really, really tried to get me to, come back in the room with them and, have a threesome with them. But I just was very polite and I was like, no, I'm okay. I'm totally fine. That was like my first unicorn hunting experience. I had never really experienced that before, but that was my first unicorn hunting experience. And I think the thing that made it so awkward was that they were specifically seeking out black people. And that sort of made me want to talk to you guys about this because being single again, and also being single in the BDSM community and also being single in the sex positive community, I've sort of recognized this troubling pattern where, girl, there's a lot of conversations in this one conversation because I've talked about this in the past before, but like what I've noticed is that when it comes to the poly community, when it comes to even the kink community to some degree, very rarely when you meet a black woman specifically, but even a black man, right? Very rarely when you meet a person of color are they anyone's primary, right? Regardless of the racial background of the person, usually the people who people want to primary are white people, right? But then you will see this sort of thing where once those people are partnered, then they can have, a more non-conventional partner. They can bring a person of color into the room. They can bring a trans person into the room. That's just something that I've personally observed. And I have so many mixed feelings about it because I know it's not something that I want at all, but I've observed a lot of black men being very much okay with it. And it's troubling to me because on one hand, I don't want to be offended for someone and I don't want to step in front of someone and say, hey, this should be something that really bothers you because girl, race play is a whole dark world of things that I want nothing to do with. I've read race play. I was going to make a video about race play at some point. I've read race play messaging boards. And let me tell you, there are all types of liberal white couples on there talking about how black men, when it comes down to it, really enjoy being called the N-word in the bedroom. Right? These people who say they're so anti-racist and say they're so this and this and that, but they really want a BBC. They want a BBC to cuck them. Look up. I mean, I challenge you right now. I challenge you right now. Look up whatever the most popular video on almost any porn website will be, like any porn aggregating website, like a Pornhub or a RedTube, or, you know, I don't know all the porn sites, you know, I use Twitter. But look it up. And like the most popular, like often like the most popular porn videos you find will be this video of a white couple being cucked by a black man. You know, that is a huge, 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 huge thing. And for me, it feels really gross. It feels really nasty, and I don't want anything to do with it. But I have observed black men. I have seen at the events I go to, in the spaces that I am, black men just jump right into it. When I went to a polyamory convention last year, and one of the questions that I asked, I went to this black women in, you know, the poly community panel, and one of the things that I asked them was, how do you feel about fetishization? How do you feel about people who are, you know, in situations where they're being fetishized, they're fetishizing your race, right? And the answer that I got was largely, well, just celebrate that they're interested in you. Like that was almost like across the board, like just be happy that they're, you know, interested in you. And to me, that was not sufficient. Like, I don't want to be with somebody who wants to fuck me because of their racist stereotype in their mind, you know, like I don't want to deal with that. And I think that's why it bothers me, why the whole BBC male cucking a white couple thing bothers me, because it's so often steeped in like this idea of like, oh, this big nasty black man is like corrupting my pure, beautiful white wife. Like that's sort of like really what it's about. It's not even about like genuinely being interested in a black man or genuinely respecting a black man as a person. It's about how taboo it is that this white girl is sleeping with a black man, you know? And I want to make it clear, there's a very distinct difference between being in, you know, an interracial relationship or one that, you know, there's a difference, right? But one of the things that I've just recognized is that there are so many black men who will fall for this. There are so many black men who will fall into this. And it's so maddening and confusing to me because I don't know why. But maybe it's just one of those things where, like, I don't know why you would like put yourself in a position where you're being used like that. You know, it's like this white girl is fucking you to piss off her father. Does that, I mean, yes, you get your dick wet, but at what cost? You know, like you're not really building anything. And I know that not all black men are okay with this. So don't interpret this as me being like, oh, all black men, because they're not. There are plenty of black men, personal friends of mine, who are super not okay with a white girl them to get, you know, make their dad angry or make their partner and his racist fantasy come true. That's a thing. But it's also super common, I've observed, for black men to just be okay with it. And it's really weird to me. I don't totally get it. So I guess really one of the things that I'm curious what you guys have. This is one of those times where I'm really curious about your true tea. How do you guys feel about that sort of thing? And I know this doesn't just apply to black people. I'm black, so I can only really speak to that experience, but it makes me incredibly uncomfortable. And I don't really know what to do about it or if to do anything, because on one hand, I am very much a don't yuck your yum sort of person. I'm very much a, you know, you do your thing and that's good for you or whatever. I'm not going to sit over here and feel, you know, judgmental about it. But at the same time, it's like, girl, I mean, for me personally, I have a hard time like separating race play. Like, I don't think, so here's this is my opinion. This is my true tea. I have a very hard time believing that someone who does race play is also invested in anti-racism shit. Because let me tell you, I've had a lot of experiences with white men who, you know, when everything's good and I'm compliant, everything's fine. But the moment that I get out of line, the moment I say something that they don't like, suddenly I'm in. Okay? And not just white men, it's men of all races, to be completely honest, even black men. But, you know, I've experienced that enough to know that it's a thing. And I don't think that it's possible for someone to be actively invested in race play and also be anti-racist. I have a hard time wrapping my mind around that, you know? You know, on one hand, I am really great. This couple went out and they're trying to find people they can sleep with together. And I think that that's cool, right? But there's something that makes me feel very uncomfortable about them specifically seeking out Black men and Black women. It makes me feel very uncomfortable. And, you know, I wonder what the proper response, I mean, obviously we all have our own boundaries. Obviously we all have our own, you know, my boundary is I don't want to deal with you if that's what your deal is, you know. We can make a whole other video about men who prefer Black women, right? We can make a whole video about that because I got a lot to say. But, you know, it's something that makes me incredibly uncomfortable that I want nothing to do with. And so obviously I won't, but I wonder how you guys feel about it and how you guys feel about couples like that and people in those positions. And if you think that you could do race play and not be racist, I don't really know if you can. So anyway, on that note, I will talk to you guys next week. Give me your true tea in the comment box below. Hopefully you guys will, you know, keep it appropriate. I don't know if we can do that for this one, but let's not be too angry at each other. But anyway, I will see you guys next week, and I want you guys to stick around and continue to learn, share, and grow with me. Again, we upload videos here every Wednesday at noon and occasionally Tuesdays. I don't know yet. Maybe by the time I upload this, we will have regular Tuesday content. I do not know yet. I make no promises. But either way, we like to learn, share, and grow here. So I hope you guys will join me. Anyway, I'll talk to you guys next week. Bye.